a client that wasn't too happy that they didn't meet our criteria in order to join the practice.
They didn't quite fit, and we didn't believe that we were best placed to help them. We've set some objective and some subjective criteria. That potential client didn't take too kindly to being told no, and not only did they email back quite strongly expressing that opinion, but also they went on and left a negative review as well. Why somebody going to that level of effort to leave such a negative review and negative view when they haven't really experienced what the process is like?
I think it's the review behind it that took us mainly by surprise, and we were sort of like, oh, that's very different. What do we do about this? We wouldn't want to subject our staff to people that are going to behave like that.
Hi there, and welcome to the Leaky Bucket podcast. I'm your host, Ian Morgan, and this is the financial performance podcast for entrepreneurs looking to get a better understanding of their numbers, to plug the leaks in their business, and to move from surviving to thriving. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Leaky Bucket podcast. Thank you for joining me, Sam, and I'm looking forward to getting started.
Great. So first up is the leak of the week. And this week, it's about a client that wasn't too happy that they didn't meet our criteria in order to join the practice. So Ian, you're going to talk us through a little bit more of that, aren't you?
Yeah, so obviously you give a very sort of brief introduction to that, but at MBS Accountants, so we have developed over a number of years some criteria of the clients that we think, or we know actually, that we help the best. And I don't need to go into them, but basically we've set some objective and some subjective criteria. And this client was referred to us by an existing client, but when we went through that process, it was quite evident that they didn't quite fit, and we didn't believe that we were best placed to help them achieve the outcomes that they want to achieve. So we politely declined to take on the work and asked them if they'd like to be referred to another firm of accountants which we believe were a better fit. That potential client didn't take too kindly to being told no, and they not only did they email back quite strongly expressing that opinion, but also they went on and left a negative review as well. And we've certainly had people in the past, I think, that haven't necessarily been happy, but they've understood and actually appreciate the fact that we're going, look, rather than we take this on and 6 months down the line, everyone's going, do you know what, this isn't really working, that actually let's call it now before it gets to that point. So I think it was a little bit of a shock probably to have somebody who reacted so strongly to that. And
well, I think the issue with this one in particular was the review that was left. You know, the email back to us to voice their opinion was sort of one thing. We were like, okay, you know, but to leave a review, and the review very much came across as if they were an existing client with that they had some issues, they weren't happy. So I think it's the review behind it that took us mainly by surprise, and we were sort of like, oh, that's very different. What do we do about this?
Yeah, I've got no problem with somebody expressing their opinion and giving that back to us in terms of they don't agree and all of that side of things. But yeah, like you say, the way that it was worded in terms of the review, it was just like, oh, there's such a poor experience of our onboarding process. And you go, well, actually, no, they didn't even make onboarding. They didn't even qualify to get to the point of being a client, which I suppose from their point of view, you could argue that maybe is some intricacies of the wording. But yeah, it certainly took us a little bit by surprise to go, why somebody going to that level of effort to leave such a negative review and negative view when they haven't really experienced what the process is like.
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say we reconsidered what we say when we are rejecting somebody effectively or referring them elsewhere and saying that we're not the right people for them in order to meet their objectives or their goals. But I think actually there was another side to it where we went, this is the right thing that we do this process. We don't just take on anybody. And actually people that behave in that manner are not the type of people we want to work with. We wouldn't want to subject our staff two people that are going to behave like that. So I think although there was an element of going, oh, this is a bit hard to take, they've left a negative review for us that potential clients or existing clients could see, I think actually there was a side of it where you go, it certainly highlighted that it's the right thing that we're selective on our clients, and reassured that we are making the right decisions in that process.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It was certainly a very clear to go, actually, we've definitely made the right decision. We've escaped a potential problem further down the line. What was interesting was then the training and the conversation I had with the member of staff, because this is the first time they'd had a new client inquiry that somebody had turned a bit sour, I suppose, in that response. Most people, if they're not a fit, are open to where is a good fit for me then. So we just went through and we repositioned what quite that looks like to her, so she knows how that potentially how could we handle that better in the future? What can we learn from that? We do lots of role play, and we do a rejection type client, but that's very different to having somebody in reality. You don't think that somebody's going to react in that way. So yeah, certainly a lot learned from that process. But I think it's one of those that you just go, actually, it's a once in a blue moon type event that there isn't a massive amount you can do to prepare for it.
I think that's important to highlight as well, isn't it? Yes, these things do happen, but they are once in a blue moon. I mean, I'm not even sure how long we've been going through the process now, a number of years that we've been sort of selective on our clients. It has got more selective over time, but certainly a number of years that we've been doing that sort of selectiveness and referring elsewhere if we don't feel we're a right fit or we don't feel they're a right fit for us. So I think one of the big things to say is that although we're saying this, that we've had this sort of negative sort of situation happen, don't be afraid to say no to clients. You don't have to accept people. You're entitled as a business owner to have the clients that you feel best fit or you feel you can work well with. You don't have to have clients that you don't feel you're going to work well with.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that you as the business owner, your business is the only business in the world that's designed to give you the life and the lifestyle that you'd like to live. And if that means that you want to select to not work with a certain type of people, a certain industry, whatever the criteria might be, that's absolutely your prerogative. And you are absolutely right if you would like to say no. Just do it with love and care, which I believe we did. Just that person didn't receive it or take it as love or care.
Okay, thanks for that, Ian. So moving on, we're going to move on to the epic win of the week. And the epic win of the week is going to come back to you again, where you went to see a client and you put some things together for them as forecasting, etc. Would you like to talk the audience through that a bit?
Yeah, so I've got to keep this fairly narrow in terms of like the detail that I give, because this is a pre-launch company at the moment, and it's utilizing some technology. But let's just say it's surrounding artificial intelligence and having some human input and interaction to take artificial intelligence to another level. And what we were going through was they had the very bare bones of what they think the products or services could look like. And now they were going to go to investors. So they're building an investor pack. But as part of that investor pack, obviously it needs some financials. And so what we were sitting down to do was to build the first 3 years of financial performance of what that would look like. So really going through and testing and going, right, how many people signing up to trials, how many people then converting to product A, product B, and so on. And then what all the associated costs with that. And it's quite an exciting prospect, I think, for everybody involved. One, it's the ability to test and question and go, yes, but you're saying you're going to get 5 new people there, but why? Why is it not 4? Why is it not 10? Why is it not 0? And just going through all of that example and those questions and just really testing and building out something that potentially could shape everybody's lives in that respect. And obviously you're going to ask for people's money. So yeah, it was just a good example. We were able to build out something to go, do you know what? That actually is very realistic. It can happen, and it can build the company towards an exitable valuation within 3 to 5 years' time.
Thank you very much. So moving on to the pick of the week. What's your pick of the week this week then, Ian?
So my pick of the week is a book that I've read, but I think it's something, Sam, that you live all the time. And this comes back to the original point with the fail of the week. And the book is called Radical Candor by, forgetting the lady's name, I think. Yeah. Basically, the point of radical candor and the reason I think you live this is about brutal honesty, effectively. It's being honest.
I don't think I'm brutal. That's what I mean. I'm definitely honest, but I don't think I'm brutal.
But it's that thing to go, actually, you'd rather say something that somebody may take as being offensive in that short moment until they realise what that potentially saved them from.
Okay, so this is the moment you feel it's brutal then, because in my opinion, that's not brutal just because they take offence to it or they have an issue with it.
Yeah, they think it's brutal in that very first moment. Yeah. So the example I was going to give, right, is that somebody's about to go into a speech on stage. You notice their flies are undone, and you go, right, I need to go tell them. Yeah, I've spotted it, and you interrupt them. And you go, oh, I'm really sorry, your flies are undone. At that moment in time, they're like, oh my god, like how embarrassing. Yeah, like I almost I wish you hadn't told me.
Yeah. I see that, but I think it's about how it's done. So when you say then I interrupt them, if they were in a group of people, let's say, for example, I wouldn't just interrupt and say it in front of the group. However, I would purposely sort of stand within the way so it wasn't visible to the group and discreetly let them know or go, oh, can I just grab you for a second? It's really important. I just need to speak to you for a second. So I may appear rude to the rest of the group, but not to that person.
But I think it's that in that moment, that person's almost like, oh, I wish you hadn't told me, until they have that penny drop moment that goes, hang on, I was about to go on stage like that. Right, I'm so glad that Sam spoke to me. But they probably don't quite realise in that moment that you told them. Some people will, but I think there's a fair few people who probably won't. But the point being, anyway, that I think a lot of people don't make the choice to say because they go, oh, that's so embarrassing for them. And it's so embarrassing for me that I'm the one who spotted, that they'll go, I'll just leave them. It will be okay. I think a lot of people probably take that route. But that's not your way, and that's not how you choose to live your life.
No. So in that example, I would find it quite hard that people would sit there and not to let the person know, and probably talking about it still, maybe saying to the person next to them or somebody they've come with, oh, have you seen that person's got their flies down, etc., or ever, or how embarrassing, I hope that never happens to me, etc. I would find that quite bad as a person, that you're prepared to sort of do that and not to let the person know in order to improve it for them. I mean, if they choose, if you let them know and they go, oh, I don't care that my flies are done, well, then that's fine, isn't it? They're making an active choice. But I think if you've spotted something that you feel the person would be upset about, or you would be upset about if it happened to you, then it's your duty as a person to let the other person know. Yeah, I do. I think it's a matter of being sort of human beings to each other and honest and caring about other people, whether you know them or not. I wouldn't walk by somebody in the street if they were having some sort of difficulty, and that could be anything that's happening. Yeah, I fundamentally believe in being honest to people, even if it can come across a little brutal. I think in recent years since lockdown, I've probably taken that a step further in terms of the fact that I think there were certainly occasions where I would allow myself to feel disgruntled or upset with something that was happening to make somebody else happy, if it was going to make someone else happy. But actually, since bits happened over lockdown stuff, I think it just gave me that sort of thing of going, actually, sometimes you have to be brutally honest to make yourself happy as well. So a small example of it would be that I like a Costa coffee, a latte from there. And over lockdown, going back afterwards, the ones local to us would predominantly, even though they could give out glasses to people, they would quite often ask if you mind having a takeaway cup, because it meant they didn't need to wash it up. It was easier for them. And that was their explanation behind it, that they didn't need to wash up and it was easier for them. And actually, if I'm going to go out and have a drink, I don't want a takeaway cup. I want a glass. And I did it once or twice. I agreed because it made them easier for them, happier. But I'd sit there and I wouldn't really drink my latte. I wasn't happy with it. I have a bit of a moan to the person I'm with, because actually I don't want a latte in a takeaway cup. And then I realised that's not actually fair on them. I'm sat there moaning about them when actually they have technically given me the choice. So when I was then offered, I would turn around and I'd go, no, actually, I'd like a glass, please. And you can tell they're a bit miffed with me. Not gonna lie. And sometimes they will go, oh, are you sure? It'd be much easier for us. And I'd go, no, I'd really like a glass, but if you really want to give takeaway cups away, I'm happy to go to another Costa. And that is my genuine response. I'm not disgruntled if I have to go to a different one, but if I'm sitting out for a drink, I want it in a glass. I don't want to have it in a takeaway cup. So I'm happy to go elsewhere, but I think it's my duty to be honest with the person rather than take that takeaway cup and then sit there and feel like I haven't had a nice experience. I'm not happy with the cup and I didn't want to have that sort of thing. And I think that's the sort of thing that I put in both my personal life and my business life. If I'm not happy with something, then I will say to the person, whether that's a program we're using, a system, whatever. If I feel there's something that needs to be said, I will say it to the person.
Brilliant. So moving on, right, we've got the buzz of the week, right? And the buzz of the week was a couple of occasions that were witnessed over the last couple of weeks. I went away and just did a quick bit of research on. And that's that some shops are refusing to take cash, basically being in favor of being contactless payments. And I assume the challenge and difficulty of the range of change that you then have to have available, that it's a bit of a pain and so on. And obviously there's fake money and everything that's in distribution and so on. What's your view on, one, shops refusing to take cash, and two, the pros and cons, I suppose, in terms of, are we heading to a cashless society?
Yeah, so I think we probably are heading towards a cashless society. It doesn't affect me per se. We very rarely have cash on us, very rarely. In fact, there's been multiple incidents where our children need pound coins or £10 note or whatever to go to school. And we've had to go and get cash from the cash machine, and then we've had to call into a bowling centre to put the notes into the coin machine to get pound coins out. We just don't have cash on us. It's just not something we need very often. So I don't feel it has an effect for us. However, I do have concerns about whether it has an effect on other people. So the elderly generation, how many of those use cash and bits still? I think although my nan was using card and bits like that, she very often had cash and used cash for bits as well. And I sort of worry about the impact it would have on them. The technology side of bits, if they're not up together with those elements. It's a hard one. I do feel it's a good decision for businesses to go cashless. I think, it eradicates a number of problems. But it's just those few sort of dynamics of people that do use cash. And actually, I know this, probably doesn't happen very much now as such, but when the kids were younger, we used to purposely give them cash in order for them to do their addition and subtraction, etc., and get them to add up bits in the shop. Did they have enough money for it, working all the bits out? Now, you can still do that with card, obviously, because you can still get them to add the bits up. Just don't really know whether it has the same effect of giving that money over receiving, so it can make sure they've got the right amount. There's those bits for kids, but I think that's very rare. But I did enjoy those elements when our children were younger.
Yeah, certainly from our perspective and an accounting perspective, it's far easier for us if the money coming into a business or the money going out of a business is not cash. Because if receipts are lost or whatever, there's always a method then of tracing it and seeing what's gone on, and you can gain explanations. Most things you can work out roughly what's purchased. And you can gain things that way. Or at least you can go, do you know what, there was that transaction that happened, now I'm missing a receipt, and go and explore that. Whereas obviously if it happened cash and you don't get a receipt, who knows it even happened apart from the business owner or the person who spent the cash. So certainly from an accounting perspective, it makes far more sense to be a cashless society in that respect.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely from an accounting perspective. I mean, I hadn't even considered from an accounting perspective, ironically, then. I just thought of my general shopping. But yeah, from an accounting perspective, definitely 100% far easier if there was no cash allowed and, it was bank transactions, card all the way sort of thing. Ironically, we did have an incident to do with cash not so long ago when we went into ProCook to buy some things one weekend, didn't we, Ian, a few weekends ago? Our local ProCook does not take Apple Pay. In fact, it turned out they didn't take any card payments unless you were actually putting your card in the machine and putting your PIN in, of which we didn't have on us because, well, who doesn't take Apple Pay now? You know, so yeah, we didn't have it on us. So luckily, we do keep some bits in the car. So Ian had to make a dash back to the car in order that we could actually pay for the products. But I think we did have to narrow down what we were purchasing because we didn't have enough in order to get the bits then because we couldn't pay on our card.
No, I think we found when we got back, I think the card we had was not a bank account we used, so it had limited funds in it. And there was no internet service in the place. We were like, we'd even have to go back outside now to go and move funds around. So we were like, do you know what, we'll spend what's on there. There was a bit of cash, club that together and go, right, that's it. Yeah, it was back to a few years ago and having a budget in that respect.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It definitely took us back in time, didn't it, to when the kids were a bit smaller and money was a lot tighter and you were sort of juggling bits about a bit more.
Yep. So moving on though, we've got a bit of a peek behind the curtains. And Sam, this week we've been doing something a little bit different. Do you want to give us a bit of an insight to what's been going on behind the curtains?
Yeah, so we had a few days away in Belfast. So effectively what happened, a friend of mine mentioned a couple of months ago about doing extreme day trips. And they're things where people have gone to Dublin for the day or they've flown to Paris for the day, etc., places like that. And I sort of thought it was a bit crazy at the time and thought, that would make me sleep deprived and what's the point in just going for a day? However, we gave the children the opportunity to do a one-on-one day with myself, and I quite regularly do these, and our one daughter picked she wanted to go to the Titanic Museum. So originally when I had a look, this was one that was in America, which clearly is not a day trip. So I had a little look around and somebody else mentioned to me that actually the Titanic was built in Belfast. So we had a look at going there. And to my surprise, it was actually incredibly cheap to fly there from our house. In fact, worked out cheaper than going to Longleat for the day. So we decided that we'd fly there and we'd do one of these extreme day trips. As it happened, we actually chose to have a one night staying over and fly back. So we flew out one day and flew back the evening the following day. Definitely an interesting experience. We had some help of special assistants. I was a bit nervous of going because our daughter had a leg injury that she'd recently done, and actually special assistants at the airport didn't know it existed, but they provided us with a wheelchair. They helped us get through security onto the plane without any issues, and the same on the way back. And at every stage we felt our daughter was safe with her leg. She wasn't going to get knocked, it wasn't going to cause any further issues, etc. And it was a really, really good experience. So what is usually stressful turned into something being actually really quite nice, and thinking, do you know what, actually normally I consider an airport or a trip to be a little bit of a stressful experience. But actually there are things out there that can make that easier. And in the instance of there being an accident where our daughter had her leg injured, there's a service that made that so much more nicer. And it just made me reconsider, what bits could we do in our company that actually go above and beyond? Is there anything else that we could be doing or providing? Is there anything we're missing service-wise, etc.?
Brilliant. It's good summary. I don't think there's much really for me to add in that respect, although it was a good trip and it was good to get away. So we're going to move on, and we're going to move to our overall power move of the week. And I want to throw my little, and I think actually for us, the trip to Belfast was the power move. That over the last 6 months or so, we've probably both been dragged back into the business significantly more than what we're used to. And normally we'd go on a nice summer holiday, we'd have lots of time away abroad, we'd have lots of availability to do lots of stuff with the children, and that hasn't been the case. And I think having somewhere to go away just for 2 days, we felt we could create and make that time available. And I was thinking of many other business owners who were, we all get busy, we get dragged into the business, we're doing so much. And then it's like holidays, just like, when I get there. And okay, it wasn't a holiday, but it was a break from work, and we just spent 2 days not thinking about work whatsoever. And it was
Although
good
you did have a meeting while we were there.
True. Yeah, one that I can rearrange. But actually, that was so insignificant, that 1 hour slot, that I'd forgotten that it even.
And actually, we'd pre-planned for it. We looked through your diary, and we knew between yours and my diary, but specifically more yours, and the fact that our daughter, pre-doing her leg, was working 4 days a week through the holidays. So we had her shift pattern to consider, and she couldn't get any annual leave. So when we worked out the dates, we knew that the ones that worked meant you had a meeting in place. So we pre-planned for it, that you would do that meeting while I took the children to go on some sort of amusement park bits and stuff. So it worked quite nicely. It was pre-done. The girls didn't really notice any difference, because you don't tend to go to those bits anyway if we're going to amusement type stuff. So yeah, it worked smoothly and nicely.
But are you in agreement, or have you have a separate power move of the last week as well?
No, I think I'm in agreement. Like you say, we normally go away a few times a year, and actually we've done 4 days in Iceland, and then we've done the 2 days in Belfast, and that's sort of all we've done this year, although we do have a holiday coming up for a week in the UK. But yeah, normally we do have a few away, so I think that was definitely our power move. And it was nice to do a shorter trip. I don't think we've never done short trips with the kids like that. And actually, now they're older, we've got, well, 3 of them are teenagers. The ones we took are 12, 14 and 17. So our oldest didn't want to come with us. So yeah, it was nice to just do a few days, because they're older, they can look after themselves and bits. So
brilliant. Sam, it's been a pleasure yet again for doing this. And everybody who's listening and watching, we'd love to have your questions just coming in, whether it's about any of the subjects we've talked about, any that we've talked about in this episode, in past episodes, or anything that you think would make a great topic coming forward. We'd love to have your questions coming in, and then we can dissect them and give our opinion. So thank you once again, everybody. See you soon. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Leaky Bucket podcast. I'd love it if you could help spread the message by clicking subscribe and leaving a review. Also, please do reach out to me on LinkedIn and let me know your thoughts on this episode. You can also find more info and links in the show notes below. See you next time. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Leaky Bucket podcast. I'd love it if you could help spread the message by clicking subscribe and leaving a review. Also, please do reach out to me on LinkedIn and let me know your thoughts on this episode. You can also find more info and links in the show notes below. See you next time.